Good morning everyone, Bore da. My name is Jessica Domiczew and I work as an archaeologist for the now Heneb Dyfed region. And today I want to talk to you about the project I've been working on in the last 2 years called the Coastal Uplands Heritage and Tourism Project. So CUPHAT was one of the last of the EU funded projects. It ended in August last year, and it was an Ireland Wales project. And the aim of CUPHAT was to work with coastal uplands communities and businesses to help them understand their natural and cultural resources and help businesses with sharing that knowledge with people from further afield. So we had 3 main partners in the project. The first one were Aberystwyth University. They were our main partners there. We then had University College Dublin in Ireland, and then ourselves, Heneb Dyfed Archaeology, obviously formerly Dyfed Archaeological Trust. And the 4 coastal upland areas that we worked in were the Mynydde Preseli and Cambrian Mountains in Wales, and the Wicklow Mountains and Blackstairs Mountains in Ireland. And the natural and cultural resources that we worked on, we called them our 4 themes. They were archaeology, geology and landforms, community life, so a lot of folklore, a lot of collecting stories from local people and photographs, and then biodiversity as well. And we did a whole host of different things between these themes, but the 2 main parts I was involved with was obviously with the archaeology and heritage. I was involved a lot with the digitisation and reconstruction of sites and artefacts to increase people's understanding and knowledge of these. And I also worked with helping create citizen science activities and other community and volunteering activities where the public were able to help us collect and create data which is useful in our field. So I'll be focusing on those today. We actually digitised a range of different sites and artefacts, and we did a lot of activities. So I'm only going to pick out a few today, some of our real key successes. So first of all, I want to take us over to the Mynydde Preseli. We're just to the southeast of Fishguard, just outside of a village called Llanacaya, to where we find this wonderful little church, Llanllawer Church. Now, sadly, this is deteriorating, and we decided to work on this site as a community project, not only because it was deteriorating, but we realised we didn't have many records on the site, especially with the gravestones in the graveyard, and also this was really important to local people. There was a lot of local people who I spoke to who remember when it was open. They had a lot of really interesting stories, and a lot of community members had family members buried there as well. So really important site. It's also really interesting, so it's got a really uncertain history. We definitely know it was reconstructed to what it was today in the 1860s, but we do believe it had earlier medieval origins. And even though we don't see any structural bits of this possible earlier medieval site, we do have these early medieval inscribed stones. So there's actually 4 of them on site. 2 of them are on either side of the gate to the entrance of the graveyard. So we have one of those on the right-hand side here, and you can see the cross inscribed there. And then the other 2 are actually on the building itself. So we've got an image here on the left, is on the outside. It's only really been seen after the render sort of falling away. And then there's one on the inside. But for us to get an image during this time, it was too dangerous to go inside. So we've got that sort of evidence. And then we've also got this lovely holy well in the neighbouring field, which we think would have medieval origins as well. The stone sort of arch over the top is actually a more recent addition. And I think the landowner was saying in the 1980s, 70s, it's got reappointed again. Now this well was believed to have healed any issues with the eyes, would have been important to the local community. And you can see now in the photo, it's still important to certain groups. People come along and leave objects here as well. And it's publicly accessible just off the road. And it's a very well-loved site. So what did we do with this poor thing? We decided to do a community project here because this site, we know that the church was used until 1992, and then it went into private ownership, and it's had lots of, well, not lots, but different owners, and the current owner now lives quite far away and is sadly very elderly, and we're not sure what the future holds with this site. So what we wanted to do as a community with volunteers, we got the landowner's permission to do some work there. So we did a week's volunteer project, which was run by my colleague Jack Rowe. And what we decided to do here was we cleared a lot of the vegetation to expose what gravestones were there. We were very aware as we were going along the biodiversity on site, so any vegetation that was attracting pollinators, birds, we left in place. And we had some specialist people there who were advising us on what we can do. So we ended up exposing quite a few of these gravestones, and with these we recorded them fully, paper records and with photographs as well. And we just got an example here of what we were doing with the recording with the gravestones. A lot of the people buried, there were actually a lot of children, mostly from Lower Town in Fishguard, and there's actually a footpath that goes all the way to Lower Town and Fishguard area, so we think this would have been a quite main church at one point for them. So there are some of the things that we were doing. We've got all those now archived. I must say we had a wonderful group of volunteers who came along. We had people from Local History Society who believe that there may have been certain people buried in this graveyard, which they did come across. There's the Harris family, which are quite well known and famous in the area, and a few other people as well. And we also had not only local volunteers, but we had volunteers who came along who had family members buried there, so they feel like they were giving something back there and helping out. And then once everything was recorded, our colleague Charlie came along with a GPS and plotted the exact location of where these gravestones are, just because we are uncertain of what the future holds for this site. So we wanted to make sure we've got what's recorded there before it's possibly lost again. And as you see in the west here, we didn't actually know it was there until we cleared the vegetation, but we've got a family group over here, and then this is where most of the modern burials are, and then we've got quite a few scattered around. I think we have lost a lot of gravestones over the years. I think this would have been a lot busier. And as you can see at the north of the church, we don't have any gravestones there, but there were actual burials there. It was heavily vegetated. There's a lot of sort of quite dense trees, small trees there, so we couldn't remove those, and the GPS couldn't get underneath there to accurately plot their location. So we've had some willing volunteers climbing between the trees and the branches to be able to record those properly for us. So it was fantastic. And not only did we just look at the gravestones and record those, we did notice when looking at the site that there's a HER record, I think it was from the 1980s, of in aerial photographs. They think they saw an earlier enclosure that surrounded both the church and the Holy Well that's over here. So we wanted to investigate that. So we carried out geophysical survey. We did two methods, magnetometry and earth resistivity, because they pick up different features in the landscape. And what we came across, clear extension of the current graveyard to the southwest. Now, this wasn't exactly what we were expecting, so we were expecting a larger enclosure going round, but looking at the area we surveyed, we probably might not have clipped it. So it might be there, just needs a bit more further work, but we're just still very excited by this extension at the end. And talking to the landowner of this farm, his family's been there for a very long time. They didn't know that there was any extension there. So we don't know when that was constructed or when that was destroyed, and we think that there would be graves still in here as well. There's also a lot of disturbance around the edge, but not really clear what that is. The site is currently sitting in a bit of a dip, and just a couple of 100 metres though to the west you come up to this really nice little hill point where when you stand on top you have an amazing view over the Preselles, and also you can see Fishguard and Goodwick Harbour, so you can see the ferry leaving through there. So this might have been quite an important sort of spot for earlier activity. But as the farmer was telling me, this site has been used for agriculture for quite a long time, and apparently these fields used to have a lot of ridge and furrow in here as well, so it's probably sadly been removed. So we looked at the graveyard and we looked at what was around. So the building itself, we wanted to do something to try and capture it in time because it is deteriorating. So what we ended up doing was creating a 3D model of this site by flying up a drone, taking multiple photos. It gets stitched together to create a 3D model, which is available on our Sketchfab page for Henneb throughout this presentation. My 3D models are all 2D because I do not trust technology. If I click those links and try and spin it around, it could go horribly wrong. So if you do want to have a look at our models, then please come to see me afterwards and we'll have a bit of an explore. And we also digitized the Holy Well as well. And then the next sort of citizen science community work that we did was using LiDAR data. Now this LiDAR stands for light detection and ranging. It's a remote sensing technique, so it's non-intrusive, which creates a really highly accurate and high resolution 3D model of the ground surface, and you can do this on larger sites and smaller sites. Now we've been using this more recently because it's an expensive data set to collect, and we'll talk more about that why in a second. But we also in the last sort of couple of decades, there's been free data available which we've been able to use, which is great in archaeology. And how we collect that data and why it's so expensive is because you have to fly a plane into the air which has a piece of equipment underneath it. And with that equipment, it fires out thousands of pulses of lasers towards the ground and through, I call it the magic of maths. So working out where that plane was when that pulse was fired out, the speed of that pulse, and also how long it takes for that to come back to the plane. They can work out the elevation of the point on the ground. So this data they're collecting is thousands of elevation points, which gets processed, georeferenced, and creates these lovely 3D models of the ground surface. So we have a lovely hill fort here, Penabannai. You can really see nicely the entrance there, and this is what like a village sort of looks like. This is the Camry Mountains with the trees and the fields, and it picks up these small changes in the landscape as well, so really useful. Another reason why this data, why LiDAR is so exciting for us archaeologists is because compared to other resources we have, this data has the ability to be able to see underneath vegetation and tree coverage and remove buildings. Now it's not as simple as it sounds, and there's a reason how it can do this, but I don't have enough time to go into that. So once again, if you want to learn out more, find out more, come to me afterwards. And we have a few other examples here of different hill forts up in the Cambrian Mountains, what they look like from the air and on the ground, so a lot clearer. So why did we choose a LiDAR community project and what did we do? Now, at the time of the project, many of the sites that we wanted to look at didn't actually have much LiDAR coverage, or there was LiDAR data, but not at the resolution detail that we needed for archaeology. LiDAR is actually a technique that's it was first came around with the Environment Agency, NRW, and other different fields, and the resolution they need is not so great for archaeology, but as sort of techniques have improved. We've got finer detail now, which is fantastic for us. And like I said before, it's become publicly available, a lot of data. So when we started the project, we didn't have much coverage, but it was a really exciting time because throughout the project, NRW, on behalf of the Welsh Government, had actually commissioned an all of Wales LiDAR survey to be carried out, and the government was going to make this publicly available. Now, this became available during the project, and we'd seen over in England a few years beforehand they had collected a lot of LiDAR data, and we know that's been extremely successful, and they've found thousands of sites through that. And also we've seen in England that there was so much data, not enough archaeology time, resources, that people decided coming up with these citizen science activities for the public to get involved with helping archaeologists with identifying sites in this new data set. And there's a lady called Rebecca Bennett from Pushing the Sensors who's been really forward thinking in this and has been helping out different projects and different groups. And what they've been doing as a citizen science activity is they've been creating a portal. So we've got an example of what it looks like online at the top right. There's a portal which you can find online. It's just like a website. You sign up to a free account. And on there, it has the LiDAR data, aerial photographs, historic maps, the historic environment records, and all those different things. And you could be on the other side of the world on the sofa, and you could look at somewhere in England, and you can look at this data and you can look at the LiDAR. If you think you found a site or something interesting, you can compare it with all those other resources on there. And then if you think it's something new, you can circle it, and then there's a lot of information you can try and fill out on the side, and it gets submitted to specialists who then check this data and either approval, or they might have to do ground truthing, which is going out, usually with volunteers and groups, to see what these features are on the ground and whether or not they are real. So we've seen all this exciting stuff in England. We're excited about this new data that was coming out in Wales. And already in North Wales, there was a project which was creating their own portal. And then once again, it was fantastic timing, because at the time, the Pembrokeshire Coast National Park Authority, so Thomas, who's at the back, he was looking at creating their own portal. They had commissioned their own data and wanted to create a portal and a training programme as well for volunteers. So we ended up collaborating with them to create these citizen science activities. And what we did was a couple of days, citizen science LiDAR days. They were held in the Cambrian Mountains, which CUPHAT ran, and then when we were in the Preseli's, obviously we were working with Thomas. And the first citizen science day that we had Rebecca Bennett from Pushing the Sensors coming along and running that. And the two areas we focused on in the Preseli's were, first trip was around the Carningley area, and the second was around Vaudreuil and Hillfort in the Preseli's. And these days sort of consisted of, in the morning, volunteers learning about what LiDAR is, how the data is collected, the pros, the cons. We were looking at what different archaeological features look like in the landscape, and then we gave them a bit of LiDAR from a specific area, so then they can identify features in the landscape. And then in the afternoon, we took them out to ground truth them, see what they actually look like on the ground. So this was more as a smaller scale little event, so then we can find out more information about how people found the idea of a portal and using the LiDAR and going out to sites and trying to figure out how this would work and how it would feed into Thomas's training and portal. And this LiDAR data fed in really well with the other areas that I was working on in the project, the reconstructions and digitisations of sites and artefacts. And it really did help with our site Vaudreuil in the Preseli's. This is one of my favourite sites. I absolutely love it. It is an Iron Age hill fort, but as you can see, it's got earlier origins in the Bronze Age with these three stone cannons on top. They haven't been formally excavated, and the hill fort has only been excavated once in 1899 by Baring Gould. A range of artefacts were found, and they're in Tenby Museum. And this is an amazing site because it's one of the largest in West Wales. We have all these dips in the landscape. These are hut platforms for possible huts of probably different uses: domestic, storage, trade, exchange, ceremonial as well. So this site is amazing. We've got over 270 hut platforms here, which is the largest in West Wales. You can't see it on the ground, but mostly from aerial photographs and LiDAR. But we have a really interesting low-lying stone wall that goes around these three cans. We think they were constructed in the Iron Age, possibly separating maybe a ceremonial space to what was happening in the rest of the hill fort. And this is probably supported by the fact that they didn't rob the stone to create these ramparts and ditches. And as you can see, these ramparts needed a lot of stone. So an amazing site. You can see it across the Preseli's. A lot of local people and public know about this site. It's on the eastern edge of the Preseli Ridge. But some people don't really know the history of it. They didn't know it was excavated, or the artefacts, or even the artefacts being in Tenby Museum. So through this project, we thought it was a fantastic way, through the technology we have access to now, to bring the site and the artefacts back together. And the way we did this was we went to Tenby Museum. Sorry, this is a terrible picture of me cutting out all the finds. But we went to the museum. Tenby Museum were fantastic with letting us come along, and we digitised the artefacts. Now, we had a range of Iron Age and Romano-British pottery. We had beads of glass, faience, clay. We had amazing spindle wells with decoration. We've got a possible shale armlet. And then we have these weird stone round bowls, which are interpreted as stone lamps in 1899, which, you know, we need to have a bit more think about those. So we digitised these, and these are once again available on the Heneb Sketchfab page. And the aim is hopefully, once the CUPHAT website is properly up and running, is that you'll be able to access these 3D models beside the models and information on Vårdregan, and you'll be able to access these all together in one place. And you can also access them when you're up on site as well, or visiting the area. So it increases the understanding and knowledge of those, and local people, schools can be using this information. Also, we found when you go up on site, it's so large that it's really hard to sort of comprehend what the site looks like as a whole. And looking at aerial photographs is fantastic, but you sort of have to move around and jump between them. So just like we did at Llanllawr Church, my colleague took up a drone, took multiple photos to create this 3D image, and we were able to add interactive points on there as well. So you can go up to the site and be able to look at this model, click on what you're seeing, and information popping up. So just making information a bit more accessible. And then talking about how the LiDAR really helped with our reconstructions and digitisation. So with this site, we knew there was roughly around 270 hut platforms. And as I mentioned before, one of our LiDAR days in the Preseli's was at Vårdregan. And this site's never had LiDAR data before. And as soon as it's popped up, it's created a lot more information for us. We now know there's actually far more hut platforms, all those dimples, in the northeast extension, a lot more than what we thought. I haven't personally yet sat down and counted now how many hut platforms I can see, but it probably would be a good thing to try and do at some point. But yes, and this has really helped when we've been putting together our reconstruction for our reconstruction person, Peter, because it makes our reconstruction more accurate and true. And what we could do with the LiDAR data is we can apply lots of different effects to it to really enhance the features that we have. So now you can really see nicely that low-lying stone wall that goes around the three cairns, and then the photo sort of turned around, but this was the northeast extension, and you can see this hillside is all just dotted with hut platforms. Now, we don't know whether or not they're contemporary, but we still think that at one time there would have been a lot of people here, a lot of activity. And so through CUPHAT, we knew we wanted to reconstruct this site to increase knowledge and understanding. And once again, timing was absolutely perfect because once again, Thomas from the National Park was doing a reconstruction project as well with Vårdregan, Gorsvow Stone Circle in the Preseli's, and also another site in Newport. And we decided to collaborate with them. And the National Park commissioned someone called Peter Lorimer from Pig Hill Heritage Graphics, who's fantastic. He's an archaeologist, he knows what he's doing. He's worked on lots of other really big sites across the UK. And what he did was used the LiDAR and other information that we provided to provide an accurate detailed model of the site, and he provided us with 2 reconstructions. These will be available on the National Park website at some point. Thomas has promised me. And we've got two different versions of reconstruction here. So this one is actually a 360-degree view from one of the entrances. So with the National... Okay. With the National Park website, they will actually direct you to where this entrance is. So you're able to go up to site, stand there and have this 360-degree view come up, and you're able to turn around and you'll be able to find out what's on this side of the image. Now, all these huts here, they're actually, because of the LiDAR and how accurate that was, Peter was managed to put these huts on the exact footprints of the hut platform. So everything's as accurate as we can try and make it. And then finally, I want to end with our last reconstruction, which is a static one from further afield. And once again, Peter used that LiDAR to put these on actual hut platforms. And he was looking at other examples, other models as well, across the UK to get some examples. And this will be available soon when you go up to site. And hopefully as well, with the CUPHAT website coming up, all this information will be together in one place to help increase understanding and knowledge of this site. And that's me. Thank you, everyone. It's a quick sort of tour through some of the stuff we were doing.